Hello, everyone. I am here today with my friend Rachel Kennedy, and I am so excited to talk to you today, Rachel, because
Yeah.
you have been through a lot, my friend. And I just want to
Yes.
hear your story. And Rachel's going to be talking to us today, kind of primarily about like starting a business after going through a divorce. And now,
Yeah,
Rachel, you have a business around mediation and helping other
I do.
people.
I
And you have a
do.
nonprofit too. Is that
Yeah.
right? Helping women out of domestic violence
Mhm.
situations and supporting them. And I've loved watching all of this grow and bloom and support you. So I'm really excited for this conversation today. But can you
Yeah.
just tell us a little bit about you and your story? And just, I'd
Yeah.
love to just jump in and hear more about you.
Yeah, I would love to. So going way back, I guess I got married pretty young. I was 21, had babies right away. So I had three babies long before I was 30. And then I actually, around the time I was having my last one, I got very, very sick, life-threateningly sick, and it ended up lasting for years. And then during that time, I also went through a really nasty divorce. When I was literally fighting for my life physically as well. It was with three kids under the age of 10. Um, it was as bad as it sounds. um, my divorce took 4 years. It cost each of us tens of thousands of dollars. It was combative. It was ugly. It was terrible. And at that time, like I said, I was very sick. I was also homeschooling my kids, and it just was not, it was on my radar that I wanted to be able to help other people going through similar things, but there just wasn't a whole lot I could do at that time with my own life.
Yeah.
Um, so following my divorce, well, that's not true. Following my separation, like I said, the divorce took 4 years. So there was a lot of time in between splitting and being legally divorced. But in that amount of time, people started to come up to me pretty quickly, probably within the first 6 months or a year, like, hey, my brother's neighbor's friend is like in this abusive marriage. Can you talk to her? Like, I know you went through this. Can you help her? And I was like, sure. Like, I'm not any sort of expert, but I guess I'm a few months ahead of where she is. So
Yeah.
we can do this together.
Yeah.
And so I started just kind of talking to women at that point. I have some friends that have similar situations, and so we were kind of doing this underground advocacy type stuff at
Yeah.
first, just kind of helping people and like bringing in money through our own, mostly PayPal at the time. I guess people don't use that much anymore, but and like buying gas cards and buying diapers and helping with deposits for new apartments and all this stuff. And it was really fulfilling. And then in the end, so we did that for a few years. And then in the end of 2020, we had just a really ridiculous rescue that it was crazy. And there were police involved, there were restraining orders involved, like for me against her family members because they came at me, and it was a whole thing.
Oh,
So then we're like,
wow.
we should probably be a little more legit. And so
Sure.
we started the nonprofit in early 2021. And side note on that, I actually just resigned earlier this summer, which is
Okay.
very sad, but it needed to happen. My life is crazy with now three teenagers and my own
Yeah.
business, which I'll get to that point. But
Yeah.
so the nonprofit is Gathering Hope Minnesota. It's still alive and well. I am just not officially
Yeah.
affiliated with it anymore, just recently, just a few months ago.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. So then by that time, we were running the nonprofit. My health was getting better. My kids were getting older. And I was like, okay, now what do I do? Because um, I had actually been on disability during that time. So I either wasn't working or sometimes I was just working very part-time because of my
Sure.
health issues. And I was like, okay, so helping specifically women, but just people, sometimes men too, through domestic abuse and divorce and post decree and custody issues and all of that was really my passion. And I was doing that a lot with the nonprofit, but also as a single mom, I'm like, that doesn't pay the bills. Um, so my undergrad was in psychology, and so I decided to go back to grad school pursuing becoming a therapist. And I always knew that I wanted to be a mediator because our divorce, like I said, it was just awful, but as far as professionals, I literally don't even know how many, I mean, a dozen or more probably. We had so many therapists, attorneys, two judges, two custody evaluators, a parenting consultant. I don't know how many paralegals, just like all of
Wow.
it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was horrible. And what can I do to help other people? So I wanted to be a therapist. And then I also knew I wanted to be a mediator. So I was in grad school I was in grad school for psych when I took the training to become a mediator. And then kind of right around the same time, I was like, actually, I'm super in love with mediation, and school was great. I loved it. I was doing well. I really enjoyed it. But kind of all at the same time, I took the training to become a mediator, started my own business. Grad school was going great, but also my oldest, so I have three kids now. My daughter's 19, and then I have two boys who are 16 and 13. So my daughter was graduating from high school, which was great. It was wonderful. I know you've launched a few kids too,
Yeah.
but it also was like, I mean, to be just really honest, almost a slap in the face. Like, I don't have very much time left with these
Right.
next two. What
Yeah.
in the world just happened to those last 18 years?
Right?
And school was taking so much time away from my kids, and I was
Sure.
constantly missing their soccer games and telling, yelling at them from my desk, like, go eat your dinner, go do your
Yeah.
homework. I'm busy, I'm in class. And I was just like, this is
Yeah.
not the kind of parent I want to be. School will be there in a few years. My kids
Yeah.
are growing up way too fast. And then at the same time, like I said, I was starting my mediation business. So
Yeah.
I put school on pause
Yeah.
and pursued, and I was working part-time at the time. I was in school full-time. I was working part-time. I quit
Wow.
school and I quit my job
Yeah.
to pursue mediation full-time.
That's awesome. We have to make those hard decisions. I've been there so many times of like,
Yeah.
wait a minute. I can do all these things, but
Yeah.
should I do all these
Yeah.
things? Should I
Yeah.
do them all at once?
Yeah.
Is it creating the life or what I need, even emotionally or physically for myself or my kids?
Hmm.
Like having to make those tough decisions. As you know, I sold my music school. Like there's we've done big things, you and I, but yeah, there's sometimes a time to resign or
Yep.
sell or lay something down because we need to wait for another season, perhaps,
Yeah.
to do all the things, right? And like you said, we can know that we're called to do something and we know that we want to do something, but sometimes the season's not quite right.
Mhm.
And
Right.
yeah, those years you're in the thick of parenting and it feels like, okay, I'm trying to get in the swing of this. Like, what do they need? How are we doing this?
Yeah.
And then suddenly it's like
Yep.
over. Like, wait a
Yeah.
minute. What the
Yeah.
heck?
Yeah.
I swear, just as we're like starting to get our groove, they
Yeah.
graduate,
Yeah.
it's just
Yep.
crazy. So, yeah, I'm really proud of you for making those hard decisions and
Yep.
for kind of following the breadcrumbs, right? Like you just have to start walking and figuring it out and then adjust and then keep going. So
Yep.
tell us more about your mediation business. What does that look like? How did you get it started? And like, how has that been? I'm imagining it's been very empowering to,
Totally.
go through all this physical stuff and the separation and the messy divorce and everything, but then also to start your own company. Like, just walk us through that. What's that been like for you?
It's a great question. It used the word empowering, and that is exactly the word that I often use when I talk about it because my life experiences have been so rough. Just like, I mean, I know so many people, I don't even, my life's not anything special compared to yours or anybody else's, but I think it's so powerful when we can use those really difficult things in our life to then turn back around and support the people, because you want to know what? People are gonna get divorced. It sucks.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm divorced myself and I will say it sucks. I
yeah,
don't recommend it unless there's no other option, but it
sure.
happens, right?
Right.
So, in fact, this is what I tell people is like, do you want your kid to break his arm? Probably not. I don't want my kid to break his arm, but he's an
Right.
athlete and sometimes he makes less than ideal choices and
Yep.
sometimes he breaks his arm. It
Sure.
just happens. So if that happens, I'm so happy that we've got TCO right down the road and
Right.
they fix us up every time we hurt ourselves,
Yeah.
and so I'm like, if my kid breaks his, like, I don't want my kid to break his arm, but given
Yeah.
that it happens sometimes, I'm so happy that there are kind and compassionate experts who can help us through that. And that's kind of how I see myself. Like, does anybody want to get divorced? No. But
Wow.
if it happens, I've
Yeah.
been there and I'm really transparent about that. And also, I want to say all of my clients so far, except for one couple, have had minor children. So even that, people are like, am I wrecking my kids? What's going to happen? And I'm like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It sucks for you and it also sucks for them.
Yeah.
That's just life. But being almost a decade out now, this coming March will be 10 years for me. I can tell you, you'll be okay. They'll be okay. And a big part of my mediation practice is like, you guys are adults, whether you like it or not, like, you're the adults here. You have made some choices that have led to this or whatever. Your kids didn't.
Yeah.
They did not ask to be here.
Yeah.
So, how can we put their needs first as we're working through this divorce process?
That's,
Um,
yeah.
that's really, really big for me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what other questions you asked. Oh, how starting a business. Um, I'm not gonna lie, it's been so hard.
Yeah.
Like, so hard. And I talk to so many people who are business owners. It doesn't
Yeah.
even matter who, I mean, one of my good friends is a lawyer and runs her own firm. I'm like actually pretty good friends with the girl that does my nails. She's wonderful at doing my nails and she also runs her own business.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter what the thing is. It's like
Yep.
you can be so good at the thing,
Right.
but running a business is like a totally different beast. And I'm like,
True.
I always tell people I feel like I'm trying to drink from a fire hose every freaking day. It's like as soon as I think I learned one thing, there's like
Yeah.
three more things. I'm like, dang it, I didn't know that. I don't even know what I don't know half the time.
Yes.
So
It's so
it's been exciting
true.
though. I
Yeah.
just literally I wake up every day and I'm like, do I get to do this again? Like
Yeah.
this is amazing. I just love my job.
Oh,
It's a lot,
good.
but it's so good.
That's so good. That is such an indicator that you're in the right spot. And you're absolutely right. It doesn't matter what business you own. There is an
Yeah.
element that's unlike anything else because
Mhm.
you're right. You can be good at the thing, the service, whatever you do, but
Yeah.
then adding in all the marketing and the legal parts and
And
keeping track
there's
of clients.
accounting and there's social
Yep.
media and then
Yes.
are you bringing in contractors? Are you hiring
Yes.
employees? Or like, oh, there's so much to
Exactly.
know. Yeah,
There's so much to know.
yeah.
Thankfully, two of my top strengths are learner and input. So like I also find joy in the learning. But
Mhm.
yeah, it kind of like never stops because just when you kind of like parenting, just when you think you hit your stride, like something changes, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I logged in this morning, it's a Monday today, and I'm getting all these notifications like, hey, we need you to set up two-factor authentication and you need to scan this QR code and get this other code. And I'm like, what is happening? And they're like, oh, by the way, we made a change over here. We need you to go like grant permissions. Like, I haven't even gotten to my work yet, right? Like,
Yeah,
I'm just doing
yeah,
all the things that
yeah.
come with, running a business or communication over the weekend or, somebody on my team has a question. Probably
Mhm.
5 people on my team have a question, like, it's
Yes.
just yeah, it's constant, but it is
Yeah.
exciting, right? And it is empowering
It is.
to know that you can make a difference in someone else's life, especially when you've gone through hard things, right? So to be able
Exactly.
to turn it around and go, "Okay, I made it through this fire." I love that quote that says something about, there are people who will make it through the fire, but who are the ones that grab a bucket and turn around to help the
The bucket
people.
of water to help other people put out
Yeah,
their fires. Yep.
exactly, and I love that because I think that's
Mhm.
what you and I are doing, right?
Mhm.
Like, I ran a business for over 25 years. I sold it so that I can completely dedicate my time and energy into helping other people's businesses. And
Yep.
one element is the VA Academy, but we have a marketing agency where we help. I mean, all we're doing is helping business owners, right?
Yeah.
And I have such a heart and a passion for business owners. but
Okay.
we all need help, all along the way. And just like you said, I mean, it basically took an army to help you through your divorce. Like you listed off a whole bunch of people, right? And it's kind of similar with a business. Like there's kind of an army needed, right? Like we've got a lawyer, we've got an accountant, we've got bookkeeping, we've got marketing, we have all kinds of things, different people, a team of people to help us in our business. And then I help people become a VA so they can help business owners, like it's just
Yeah.
this whole like ecosystem, right?
Yep.
And it's all with the intention and the heart to help people. And I think that's
Yep.
probably what you and I have in common is that heart
Sure.
for helping people. So
Mhm.
what encouragement could you give to maybe a newly divorced mom who's just reeling from, like you said, decisions that were made, maybe things we didn't know, who knows, right? Like I love the illustration that you said of like we never want our kid to break their arm, but thank goodness we have healthcare professionals that can help us when we're there. So
Yep.
yeah, if someone's listening to this and they are just like, okay, I found myself here, what encouragement would you give them? I guess what, if you were going to look into their eyes and they're thinking like I want to grow this business, like how could you encourage them?
I think the biggest thing that I love telling people is it gets better. Like I can remember being in that spot for freaking years, man. I mean, I most of the time didn't know how I was going to get through the next hour. I was sick, I was broke, I had all these little kids that needed me. Just it was just overwhelming every minute of every day.
Yeah.
And things aren't perfect now, but when I think back to who I was 10 years ago, towards the end of my marriage, or even 5 to 7 years ago, when I was still trying to just kind of find my footing, I never ever could have imagined how beautiful life would be now. And I've been on this journey long enough to know a lot of other people, particularly mostly women, who have been on similar trajectories for years also. And it's just amazing to watch, like, some people have gone back to school. Some people have completely switched careers. Some people have really excelled in their same careers. A lot of us used to be a stay-at-home mom. I homeschooled my kids for 12 years, and now I'm in my 40s and I'm like, well, I'm a career woman now for
Yeah,
really the first time in my life, to be honest. I had
sure.
kids really young and stayed with them for a lot of
Right.
years.
Right.
And I mean, some have gotten married, some have gone on exciting vacations. So just all these different, like, I know what it's like to be in that position where you can't even imagine life any different. And I can just, I mean, I'm like, people are like, faces are going through my head right now as I'm thinking about all the people that I know who have just beautiful stories of redemption and growth and new jobs and new houses and new loves. And, our kids are all growing up now and graduating and getting out into the world and doing really great things. And,
Yeah.
it's just, that's my biggest thing is it absolutely does get better.
Yeah.
It
That's
absolutely does.
that's so good. Were there any like support systems or anything that you had in those early years of going through this, and especially the 4 years it took for it to be finalized? What were your lifelines? Do you have any advice of like, make sure you find good friends, or, is there anything, I don't know, like what
Yeah.
helps get you through?
Um, my family was absolutely huge. My parents actually, when I was still in my marriage, but towards the end, we'd already been separated once. We were back together trying to work it out. Obviously, it wasn't working. They saw the writing on the wall way before I did, and I was really sick. They bought a house that has an apartment in the basement, so that my kids and I would have a place to live while I was
Uh,
fighting my health issues and also fighting through the court system at the same time. It was a party and a
yeah,
half. Um, I truly actually question whether I would be alive today if my
Wow.
parents had not done that.
Yeah.
Um, I pretty quickly found some friends who were in similar situations. And at times it was hard because there was just so much pain and so much difficulty in our friend group. But just to be surrounded by those people who know what you're going through. And actually, one of my closest friends, we met through a mutual friend. And the very first time we had been kind of, I think we became Facebook friends or we were texting back and forth or whatever. And the first time I met her in person was the day of my first court date at the beginning of my divorce. And she met me at a park. Like, I was freaking out. I was so scared to go to court. And she met me at a park with a bunch of flowers after
Oh,
I left court. And she
oh,
came to my house last week. She actually called and she was like, "Hey, are you home? I'm 5 minutes away." And I was like, "No, but I'll be
oh,
home in a few minutes. Just wait my driveway.
oh,
See you soon."
I
I
love
mean,
that.
and it was probably well, either it was probably 9 years ago, I think, that, you know, park date with the flowers,
Oh,
because
yeah,
I think I had been separated maybe a year and she had just gotten separated maybe a month earlier or something. And so a mutual friend was like, "Hey, you guys should talk to each other." And she's
yeah,
still a good friend all these years later. And she's a great example of somebody who's, went back to school and our kids are growing up and she's remarried and, all these
yeah,
beautiful things now. But it's been so great to have those friends who really understood we could support each other through our court dates and our custody evaluations and crying because our kids were going to dad's house for a whole week and we'd never been away from our kids for a week before, and just going through all that stuff together.
absolutely. It's
Mhm.
so important, I think, to have people going through similar life situations as you. And, I'm a person that like I still think about childhood friends. Like I don't let go of friends easily, right? But I read a quote too that said like it's okay if some people come and go because your life changes and you're going to have who you need along your journey when you need them. And
Mhm.
then sometimes they fade kind of like in the background of a photo, right? Like it becomes a little more blurry, and not that they're gone, but we have different travelers along the path of life depending on what we're going through, right? And
I love
so I love hearing you say that, and I love that you had a mutual friend who was like, "Hey, you two need to connect."
Yeah.
Right? Like that is so life-giving, and I know even just for me personally, my kids have been it's been a busy last 2 years. I've had 2 kids get married, a grandbaby born, and another one's engaged, in the last whatever it's been, 7 years. I've graduated 3, I'm about to graduate my 4th, and I found a friend group recently. We kind of like assembled again by one mutual friend, and we all have these young adult kids. And
Mhm.
it is just like essential, right? To have people going through what you're going through
Yep.
because nobody has time to get together for brunch and pretend, right?
Yeah.
And just act
Yeah.
like everything's happy and hunky dory.
Yeah.
I don't have
Yeah.
time for that, right?
Uh-huh.
So I love
Yeah.
that. I think that is such a good piece of advice. Now, I don't know, I'm guessing, are you an extrovert, Rachel? Yeah. Okay. So if someone's listening that's an introvert, like how would you just encourage them, you
Yeah.
know, like it's
Yeah.
worth it. Get out there. So
Yeah.
important.
Actually, what's funny? I used to consider myself like 100% extrovert.
Yeah.
Now I would say I'm probably 60 to 70% extrovert, but really probably 30 to 40%
Yeah.
introvert.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if that's a real thing. I just made up a
Oh,
spectrum in my
yeah.
brain, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So I think two things. Number one, I think there's really great value in, I spent a lot of time journaling. I still do. I go for walks all the time. And that's kind of when I do my best thinking or learning. Even I'm listening to
Yeah.
podcasts or audiobooks or whatever, or I'm catching up on the phone with friends or whatever. I go to the gym. I think I said journaling, listening to, music, that kind of stuff I think is really important on our own.
Yeah.
Um, but then again, having that friend group, even if you're introverted, like
Yeah.
somebody close to me now, is more recently divorced. It's been a year and a half, I think. And that person spent kind of like the first, so I guess it's probably about a year and a half. 'Cause he spent like the first year just like, and they were married a long, like 25 years.
Sure.
And so then they're like, I'm divorced. Guess I'm just gonna die alone now.
Yeah.
Like just focusing on work and young adult kids. And
Right.
that's kind of it.
Right.
And now finally in the last few months, they're kind of getting out there more and like, oh, oh yeah. And this person is quite introverted, but
Yeah.
still realizing there's a whole world out there and there are new friends to be had and there are old friends to reconnect with. And,
Yep.
even going out to a happy hour after work with,
Yeah.
the people, just all the different things and, making an effort to meet new friends while also this person, I'm more extroverted, but this person will tell me sometimes, I just got home from work. I need to unwind a little bit. I'll call you in an hour. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, understood, like, and that's cool too. But
That's right.
so um not dishonoring yourself in
Right.
like, I guess I'll just pretend to be an extrovert and then I'll burn myself out, but being honest with yourself and everybody else saying, I need some time to be by myself. I need to process, unwind, whatever. And then I will also make the effort to go out with the group of friends on a Friday night because
Right.
that's also important to have those social connections.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you've said some really good points. Like, even sometimes we do have to almost hibernate for a year, right?
Mhm.
After, I mean, my very, very good friend went through a divorce in 2020. And I think that happened to a lot of people, right? Like, when,
Terrible timing too.
right? I know, but I almost think it was like you can't just keep limping along
Yeah.
anymore. I think
Yeah.
2020 was sort of this like deadline, and it made a lot of people have to make decisions that maybe had been coming for a long
Mhm.
time, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, this friend of mine, I mean, she definitely just needed to hibernate and be alone and process and grieve. But what you're also saying of like, yeah, honor that, but there is life out there and it does
Mhm.
get better, like you said.
And that's important too.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and knowing that, but then if you're starting to feel lonely, if you're starting to feel like, well, even shame, right? And my friend's gone through that of like, what are people gonna think? What are they, how do they perceive me? And I'm like, girl, get over here, and come to our book club so I can
Yeah.
show you that no one's judging you. They're just gonna be excited that you're here. And so I guess that's my encouragement as well, is if you I don't know, Winston Churchill said, "If you're going through hell, keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keep
The
going."
only way through it is through it.
That's right. So if
And
you're making it through, keep walking, keep going, and then when it's time, yeah, like make and the thing is, introverts, we like to be alone because I'm an introvert, but what we really love is really deep,
yep.
real friendship. So you don't need a whole lot of people.
Yep.
Like 1 to 4, right? Like that's about it. And
Yep.
so just don't forget about your people, and if you need new people, find new people, right? So that you can have that support system.
That's what I was thinking too when you were talking about, shame and judgment and stuff. Honestly, I've done so much work around that. Brene Brown is probably the queen of
Yes.
all of those things. And, but what I was thinking when you were saying that is if people are making you feel that way or, projecting those things
Yeah,
onto you, they're not your people.
right.
You can find
Exactly.
new people. I mean,
That's right.
it's certainly easier said than done, but
Sure.
it's a pretty incredible place to be in life when you find people who are like, oh, your life's messed up. That's cool. Me too.
Yep.
Love you anyway.
Exactly.
Like, let's just be messed up together. It'll be
Exactly.
fun.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
because like I said, we don't have time. I don't have time for fake friends. I don't have time. I don't know. You get over 40 and it's like, I used to be a perfectionist. It's like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I just want to be real and authentic. I can't. And also, I just want to circle back to when you said, like, I used to be 100% extrovert. I hear this all the time. So I think it's an over 40 thing too.
Yep.
I really do think we become more introverted. We do have a little bit less energy, or
Yeah.
we also aren't, we don't need to keep up that same pace. I mean, remember when our
Yeah.
kids were little and you just have to like have all this energy and go, 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 go and
Yeah.
play dates and it, I mean, thank God we had the energy we did in our 20s and 30s, right? For
Yeah.
those young kids. But yeah, it's okay to morph and change in your 40s, 50s and beyond. And yeah, sometimes that means walks alone or journaling, music, being at home more, but we are still made for connection, right? We
Mhm.
do all
Absolutely.
need human connection. And sometimes, yeah, people are judgy and weird. Okay, then find new people. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's in our own head, right? It's
Yep.
the fear and that shame will keep you so bound. And that feeling of being perceived like, what are they thinking of me? Or what am I putting out there, or what do people think happened? And there's probably, things you don't want to share or you don't need to share, and that's fine. But then you're worried about like what do they think went down, and it can just be such a mind um maze to make it through,
Yeah.
right? But for me, when I get stuck in that place, actually making myself get together with friends, I realize like, oh, they do have their own issues and they're probably not thinking about me as much as
Yeah.
I feared they were thinking about
Yes.
me or judging me, right? So I
Yeah.
think just maybe facing some of those fears and making yourself, you know, go to a book club or an event, or like you're saying, go out on a Friday night, whatever matches your personality, just test it, right? And just
Yeah.
see, like,
Yeah.
is it as bad as you feared, or is it better? And is it actually like life-giving, right? That those
For sure.
connections. And I'm
Mm.
so glad you had your parents too and that family. And of course, we can't create that, but even your nonprofit, right? Like you that you started, like there are resources, right? So is there anything else that you would advise or tell people like, hey, this exists out there, like check into XYZ? And people listening could be all over the United States.
Yeah.
And but anything that you can recommend?
Um, okay, as silly as it sounds, have found and still do find so much support in Facebook groups. And
Yeah.
like, I think the one thing that's really important is uh, so going back to, being social and stuff, it's super important that that's not our only
Yeah.
social outlet because life exists beyond the
Yeah.
screen. Um, but I think it can also be really helpful to find groups partially where, people know what you're going through. I've been adminning a group like that since I think we started it like in 2016 when a bunch of us were brand new out of our marriage. And there's that. Um, but those spaces can be a little bit like echo chambers at times. Like I think they're really needed, but I don't think that should be the only place we
Right.
hang out. If
I
we're just
agree.
like, oh, I'm in court again, or
Sure.
whatever, it can be kind of depressing. But also some of the really cool Facebook groups I've been in, I found some of my best friends, to be honest, where they're like social groups or they're I don't know, there are some that are like Twin Cities women's outings or some that are like
Sure.
singles over 40 or whatever they are.
Yep.
But people will just post, hey, I'm going to this live concert on Thursday. Who wants to come? And you just like show
Right.
up and you're like, oh, well,
Yeah.
okay. All I did was show up to this event. And now there's a bunch of other people who also like to
Yeah.
go see live music. That's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. That's
Those types
great.
of things. Even getting involved with our kids things.
Mhm.
My kids are in school, they were homeschooled, and in both situations, I've found other parents, moms and dads, that I get along with great. And so it's
Yeah.
really fun to sit next to my friends at my kids' basketball game,
Yeah.
say hi to people when we're dropping them off at school in the morning, that kind of thing. Um,
Yeah.
and I just think going a little bit of a different direction,
Mhm.
self-care is like so important. And I feel like that's kind of a cliche thing, but it can be formal, like therapy or like a support group, or it can be informal,
Yeah.
like just go out by
Absolutely.
yourself and get an ice cream cone or walk down by the lake or whatever.
Yes.
Um, and I have found that actually, if we're circling back to being a business owner too, and my job is really intense, like most people aren't happy to see me. Most people are in probably the most stressful period of their lives when they come see me.
Yeah.
And very often, like very often, when people hear what I do for work, they're like, oh, how do you take care of yourself? I'm like, that's a great question because it is
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah.
Just some of that stuff. It's, I've got the really good friends. Sometimes I just eat a whole thing of ice cream by myself. Sometimes I, go walk down by the lake. I live pretty close to Lake Minnetonka, and I love to go down there and just walk by the lake and do some people watching, or sometimes I'll take a book down there and just sit by the lake and read my book. Or, I just
Yeah.
it's super important. I mean, life is busy. Life's always busy with
It
kids and a
is.
business. And I've got
And
varsity athletes now who are 6 day a week practices and
right.
all the things.
All
But
the
we just
things.
have to figure out how to take good care of ourselves.
I totally agree. And I think what I'm hearing from you too, and what I've had to learn to do is like work will always be there, right? Our business, the to-do list never ever goes away.
It just gets longer.
It does. It gets so long.
Yes.
Yes. So even just like having the courage to shut your laptop and
Yep,
walk away, that's self-care.
it
And
is.
I used to when I was homeschooling and all the kids were here, I used to have to work on weekends because the
Mhm,
week was like didn't allow me to get all my work done. But
mhm.
now that I'm slipping more into a maybe more normal, quote unquote, normal work hours because my kids are older, I really have challenged myself not to work on weekends at all. And that's been new and
Yep.
amazing. And
Mhm.
just allowing myself to go, you know what? It'll be there on Monday. So I am going to walk away from this. That is self-care as well, because
It
we can't
absolutely is.
keep pushing, pushing, pushing. And especially if you're coming out of a really stressful, awful, who knows what is going on type of marriage, right? And whether it's cortisol levels and hormones and burnout or, chronic
All
illness,
of the above.
all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's even more important for our bodies to be able to rest and recover. And that's hard because I'm an achiever and I like getting things done. I
Yep.
don't like to just rest,
Yeah.
but if we don't, our bodies will demand it from
Yeah.
us, right?
Yeah.
And that's definitely what I've been going through too, is like my body's like, "Oh, sorry, you're gonna just sit here. You're
We're
gonna just,
shutting down today.
yep, we're shutting down." It's
Yep.
like a computer that doesn't work anymore, right? My body's like, "Yeah, not gonna work." So allowing yourself to do that, right? And allowing yourself to rest. And I don't know, I would hope too, there is joy and hope in starting a business too, right? Because so
For sure.
as you're leaving this old thing and recovering and resting and going into this new thing, I really do think, entrepreneurship can be, like we said, empowering and fun and exciting and stressful and all the things. But it's a really great outlet, right? And I don't know about you, Rachel, but like for me, it does give me so much accomplishment, right? Not
Yeah.
only that I'm helping other people, but like I'm making money.
Yeah.
I'm doing this. I
Yeah.
created this,
Yep.
right? Like I created this and I'm supporting my family. So can
Yeah.
you speak to that at all? Just like
Yeah.
'cause you did a lot and through school but now like this is your company, like that has to feel really empowering and exciting to you. But just tell
Yeah.
me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Yeah. It does. I mean, if I'm being really honest, sometimes it's scary because I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
it's all on me. So there's that. Um,
Yes.
but it is really empowering too. And money for sure, but time wise too.
Yeah.
Because I do still struggle here and there with some health issues. And I have 3 teenagers, and one lives in a different state now, which is a whole crazy new
Yeah.
phase of parenting.
Sure.
And then a high schooler and a middle schooler. And it's like, it is important for me to work and make money and put food on the table for this varsity athlete whose coach told him he needs to eat 4,000 calories a day. And
Wow.
I'm like, might as well just move into his shoe, man. He eats so much. Um, but then it also gives me the freedom to drive an hour each way and show those boys on the soccer team that like maybe some of the other parents couldn't make it or they had other,
Sure.
commitments with siblings, but
Sure.
Jonathan's mom is here to cheer for
Yeah.
us and bring us juice boxes and whatever. And, I mean, I can't always do that. I've missed some of the soccer games because I have work meetings and I
Sure.
just wasn't able to get out of it. And it's life, and my kids understand that too. But for the most part, I am able to take care of my own health when I need to. And sometimes that means doctor's appointments in the middle of the workday.
Yep.
I'm able to be there for my kids.
So the
And
freedom and flexibility, I'm assuming.
totally,
Yeah,
totally. Yeah. And that's what I need at this point. And I think,
absolutely.
to be really honest, I don't actually think entrepreneurship is probably for everybody. Like
No, it's not.
maybe it isn't, but I also think it's something that most people should consider,
Yeah.
because it is really exciting and it really does lend itself well to freedom and being able to grow at your own pace and do things you're proud of and stay in your zone of genius, if we're going to
Yep.
use that
Mm-hmm.
term, while also like I feel like I have the margin in my life to do really well at work and also take good care of myself and take good care of my kids.
That's so good. Oh my goodness, that's so great. That's actually another book, Margin. That's a book. And that really taught me a lot of kind of how do you create space in your life. So Margin and Boundaries are two great books that I read.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
love those.
for sure.
What personality traits do you think it does take to be an entrepreneur or business owner?
Um, maybe this isn't what you want to hear. My first thought was you got to be either brave or stupid, maybe a little bit of both.
Right?
Um, but I think it helps if you really trust yourself.
Mm.
I imagine it probably helps if you have a business background, which I don't, which I think is probably why it has been such a big learning curve for me. But I know other entrepreneurs who are like, oh yeah, I worked in a corporate setting for 10 years. So this is what we did for marketing, or this is what we did. And I was like, oh, that must be really cool to have that background knowledge. I don't have any of that.
Sure.
Um, I think gathering the right people around you.
Yeah.
I'm in some different networking groups and I've started to kind of figure out which ones are the ones that are really the
Yeah.
people
Yep.
that I resonate with, that are like kind of going the same direction I'm going.
Yeah.
Um, this isn't really a personality trait. Well, I don't know. I love to read, although actually
Mhm.
not really paper books because
Yeah.
my brain doesn't quite work that way, but audiobooks are life,
Yep.
man. And I
Yep.
learned so much from
Yep.
books.
So loving to learn, because that's what I've found to be
But
true.
yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah,
Like kind of
from
hungry for knowledge.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, and it can be grad school. It
Yeah.
can be people that are further ahead than you in I mean, one of my really good
Exactly.
friends has been in a similar, she's a family law attorney, but she's like 7 years in. She's like my personal business coach, man. Like
Yes.
I learned so much from her. I read
Yeah.
books, I listen to a lot of,
Yep.
podcasts, and there are just so many ways to learn if you're open to it. Because
Yeah.
if you're that kind of person with a, like the fixed mindset, growth
Hmm.
mindset, just read that book,
Yep.
Mindset by Carol Dweck, I think. That was phenomenal. But like,
Hmm.
so we'll go with that. You got to have a growth
Yes,
mindset too,
I
I think,
agree.
because if you kind of just think this is all there is to life, I go to work, I punch in, I punch out, I go home,
Right.
fine, go
Right.
for it, do it. I mean, the world needs people like that.
Yep.
But if you're like that, I think it's going to be pretty hard to be an entrepreneur.
I agree.
I
I
think
agree.
creativity too is a really big
Yes.
one, to
Yep.
be able to have different iterations of, I mean, like you started a music school and now you're in business.
Right.
Like those don't even seem super related on the
I
surface,
know.
but
Right.
it's kind of easy to look at your journey and see how
Right.
you had different iterations of the businesses. And it was just this big evolution. Uh,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I totally agree. And just for the record, you don't need a business background to have a business. In fact, some people that I've coached, if you come from corporate, it's actually a huge mind shift
yeah.
to owning your own business. But I also hear what you're saying, that they have some sort of pattern to look after, but
There's
you
at
have
least
to,
some foundational knowledge there that I don't
yes.
feel like I have.
I hear you, but you also have that friend that you said is like a business coach. And for me, when I started my business, I knew nothing and I just read and figured it out. But business coaches were what really helped me. So basically,
Mhm.
the core component is somebody who's gone before you, that
Yep.
you have access to someone who is
Yeah.
like a tour guide, right?
Whether
Because
it's formal or informal, or, I'm in some
exactly.
formal, types of coaching programs too, but that
Absolutely. Like,
there's just
I always use this example, but I would never go to Europe just show up and like figure it out. Like, no, 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 no. I would watch all the YouTube videos and, read books or, watch people on TikTok, and then I'd get a travel agent and I'd have them help me like map out a plan or, something. And yes, I am a
That's
plan.
the difference in our personality.
That's probably
Because
true.
last fall, I literally showed up in Europe and I was like, cool, now what? To be
That's
fair, I was traveling
hilarious.
with my mom and my daughter, and they had done more research ahead of
Okay,
time.
okay.
I feel like I've kind of done the same thing with my business for like
Sure.
also, and I actually don't think it's probably the best strategy, but I was like, all right, I have this business.
Now
Now
what?
what
Okay, okay. So do you know your Myers-Briggs type?
not really. I've done it a few times and I get different answers. I feel like
Okay,
I should
okay.
get
Do you know if you're probably a P though at the end? P versus J? Because that would be a quality of
think so.
pre-planning versus like, hey, let's just jump in and go for it and figure it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just curious.
I'm a weird mix of like some things I
Sure,
probably plan forever and don't
sure,
actually execute, but most of the
sure.
time I'm like jump in the pool first and then see
Yeah,
if I can figure out how to swim.
sure,
And I
sure.
feel like it's probably not the best strategy, but it's the one I
Hey,
typically
you
use.
know what? There's no, I'm again, I'm over
Um,
40. There's no best strategy. There's no one right way to do it. Like,
yeah,
I truly believe God created us each the way we are, right? We all have different strengths, we all have different abilities, and I think it's helpful to know how we're wired,
yeah,
right? To go, okay, well, this is how I do things. But there's no one right way. And clearly, Rachel, it's working for you.
yeah.
You're finding your way, and that's what's
Yeah,
inspiring, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
sometimes life puts us in situations, sometimes we make choices. It it can go both ways, right? Like sometimes
yeah,
things happen to us and sometimes we choose to make things happen. But however it is, we got to figure it out, right? We have to just figure it out and taking it one day at a time and just the next step, right?
yeah,
It's just, another quote. I love quotes. But just, I think it was Martin Luther King who talked about just enough light for the next step I'm on. And that's always what I pray for, right? Like, Lord, just give me enough. Like, I don't have to know, I wanna know the whole path, but, like, I don't need to. Just tell me what I'm supposed to do next,
yeah,
and trying to figure that out, and sometimes that is through friends and mentors, and sometimes it's books, sometimes it's a formal training program, sometimes it's a Facebook group, and I think you've given us so many resources today, and probably the people listening are gonna go, "Okay, well, check, check, I'm doing it right then,"
yeah, yeah,
because we all just kind of figure it out as we go. And
yeah.
that's the best way, and to kinda circle back to how you started, there's always
Yeah,
hope, right? It can
always.
and will get better,
Mhm.
and if you're in a dark place, just keep going, right? Like, the tunnel doesn't last forever, and there's been times in my business, in my life, when I'm like, "Oh, it is completely dark, and I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's coming." But if you're going through a tunnel like that, now's not the time to jump off the train, right? Like
No.
just keep going and wait for that light to reappear because I really believe it will.
Mhm.
And I mean, even just today, it's like, okay, the weather is cooler, the sun is out, like hope springs new, right? And so in those dark days, I'm not secretive about it. I've dealt with depression, I've dealt with anxiety. And when I'm in my darkest and my lowest, I just have to kind of wait and then the sun will reappear,
Yeah,
right? And there is hope. And so yeah, I think just the message of keep going, put one foot in front of the other. Thank you so much for sharing your
yeah,
story, your heart. Is there anything
yeah.
else that you feel like you'd like to share at all as we wrap up?
No, I don't think I I think just to reiterate with the divorce, like I'm so far out now and I know so many people in that situation and it literally always gets better.
Oh,
Not great. Some people do still struggle, but
of course.
it always gets better, even if you can't see how it might.
Right. Oh, thank you for saying that. I've seen that too, with friends in my life.
Mhm.
And again, it's back to hope and just believing. And honestly, probably if you've taken those steps and you've decided to move forward with a separation, with a divorce, there probably already, I would imagine, is a seed of hope, unless it's happening to you and it wasn't your choice. But the people in my life, like, I think they knew something has to get better, something has to change, right? That's why you're on this journey.
Mhm.
And yet, when we make big, hard decisions, sometimes it's, oh, what have I done? Great. Now what?
Yeah,
Or is this going to end up worse? Right.
yeah,
But just believing that it can and will get better. And there are more days ahead,
yeah.
and to just find people that you can link arms with, right? And just get that support that you need, because we all need support, right? We all need people to walk together with arm in arm through life, and probably multiple people,
Mhm.
and because sometimes, a friend might be down and another one's up, and I
Yeah,
can't just rotate through, like, whoever I can, right? And then I
yeah,
give back when I can, right? So
yep,
we're all giving and taking. But yeah,
yep.
thanks again, Rachel. It's just so good to
Yeah,
chat with you today. I just really
yeah.
appreciate it, and I'm thrilled to have watched you on this journey. Do you remember running into me? It was at a homeschool conference. That's one of the first places you and I talked face to face, because our girls were friends. And
Mhm.
then we saw each other, and you were telling me that you were going through this divorce and all these health challenges. I don't know if you remember that moment, but we have been connected for, I mean, it's probably
A
been,
lot of years.
I mean, possibly 10 years, because the girls were really
Yeah,
little. I don't know.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
not that
something
long,
like
but
that. 8 or 9, I think, probably.
mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a long time.
So I've watched you, mostly via Facebook, just through all of these things, and the trials, and how you've overcome, and now you're giving back, and it's very inspiring. So thank you
Thank
very
you so much. Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.